Hello students, welcome to the Sastra talks. I hope all of you are doing well and best good luck for your exam. Okay, so as we are going on with the NEET previous paper revisions from the botany session, and in the previous videos we discussed about the photosynthesis process and some of the PYQs that will come from each topic. In this video we are going to learn about the C3 cycle. Okay, still now we learned about the light reaction of the photosynthesis. Okay, in this video we are going to deal with the dark reaction of the photosynthesis, in which normally the C3 cycle will occur. Okay, let's get into the topic now. Yeah, so here you can say what is a C3 cycle means. Normally it occurs in the C3 plants, like some of the plants. So it is known as C3 cycle or Calvin cycle because he proposed this cycle, or it is also known as the Calvin-Benson-Basham cycle. Okay, so if you see here, so normally the C3 cycle, what is the main purpose of the C3 cycle is, still now we learned about, normally we know what is the photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a process of converting the light energy with the help of some water and atmospheric carbon dioxide into a chemical energy, like in the form of glucose. Okay, so in that before sessions, like in the light reaction, we learned about how the water which is received by the plants is photolyzed and how the energy molecules like ATP and NADPH are formed in the light reaction. Okay, so that light reaction needs normally for sunlight, but in the C3 cycle we do not need the presence of sunlight. So what is the main purpose of the C3 cycle is it converts, like the main pathway for the carbon fixation. Here you can see that we know that the carbon dioxide is also one of the main source for the photosynthesis. So in this C3 cycle normally the carbon dioxide means the atmospheric carbon dioxide is fixed in the plants so that the remaining process can go on. Okay, during the photosynthesis. So normally here you can see that the products which were formed in the light reaction, we know that every process goes by step, like in a way. So before we, like the plants has undergone light reactions. Okay, in that light reaction, what were the products formed? ATP, NADPH, and some evolution of oxygen. Okay, so what will happen is, so those products which were formed in the light reaction will help in the dark reaction through the Calvin cycle. Okay, so excuse me. So what will happen is here in this, and another thing we have to know is, first thing, like we know that the light reaction occurs in the thylakoid membranes of the chloroplast. Obviously this it also occurs in the chloroplast itself, but it occurs like this C3 cycle occurs in the stroma of the chloroplasts. Okay, so if you see normally they'll say that first carbon compound is nothing but the phosphoglyceric acid here. Why? Because it is the main point. Why? Because in the previous NEET exam they have given this question, what is the first stable product of the C3 cycle. Okay, that's why it is the main thing you have to remember. So here if you see the image here, how the process will go on and how many steps are there and everything. Normally here you can see the chloroplast image. In this you can see that this light green color is nothing but the membranes, double membrane. This is the thylakoid, and the dark green one, the which appears like a cytoplasm, it is known as the stroma of the chloroplast. Okay, so in this stroma only this C3 cycle will occur. Okay, let's see how it will takes place and what were the steps included in the C3 cycle. Okay, here you will see what, first of all we should know that what are the phases of the C3 cycle. Normally we'll go by step. Okay, what was the first step is, normally when we see that commonly they'll say that there are three phases of the C3 cycle, that is carbon fixation, reduction and regeneration phase. But there are actually five phases, remaining two are not appeared in the reactions, but they are also important. Why? Because the first phase is nothing but CO2 that enters the stroma. Why? Because without the CO2 the C3 cycle cannot be happened. Okay, so first step is the atmospheric CO2 is diffused into the stroma of the chloroplast, means that atmospheric CO2 enters through the thylakoid membrane and enters into the stroma of the chloroplast. So this is the first step of the C3 cycle. Okay, and what was the another step is like first phase in the cycle itself is carbon fixation, means that diffused carbon dioxide is fixed, like it is indulged in the cycle, Calvin cycle. Okay, how it will happen and everything we'll see here. Here you can see that there is a first product, like first reactant which is useful for the C3 cycle, which is helpful, is RuBP here. RuBP nothing but ribulose 1,5 bisphosphate. Okay, so this is the first reactant and for first chemical compound which helps for the fixation of atmospheric CO2 into the C3 cycle. So what happened here is you can see that RuBP here. RuBP is nothing but a 5 carbon compound. The lavender things you are seeing here are nothing but the carbons, like, okay. So this is the 5 carbon compound which is having 2 phosphate groups in the first and fifth position of the carbon. That's why it is known as ribulose 1,5 bisphosphate. Okay, so when this ribulose bisphosphate present in the stroma of the chloroplast reacts with the atmospheric carbon dioxide, what it will happen means, obviously when anything is added means obviously it is added to this ribulose phosphate. Okay, so there is an intermediate that is formed with the help of, here one thing you have to remember is this enzyme, that is RuBisCO. It is known as RuBisCO. Okay, RuBisCO means ribulose bisphosphate carboxylase enzyme. Okay, it is a carboxylase. Why carboxylase? Means it will cleave the carbon dioxide here so that the carbon can attach to the ribulose bisphosphate. Okay, so here in this reaction you can see two steps. In the first step, the RuBP combines with the CO2 to form a 6 carbon intermediate. It is having a name like it is a like intermediate compound. It is not a stable compound, so it is not important. But this intermediate again is cleaved into two parts. That is nothing but 3 carbon compound and 3 carbon compound. That compound is known as 3-phosphoglycerate. Okay, so the 3 carbon compound which is evolved from this RuBP is nothing but 3-phosphoglycerate. So here we are having total 6 carbons. So that's why in the first reaction in the carbon fixation of the C3 cycle we'll get 3 carbon compounds, means 3-phosphoglycerates here. Okay, like this process will occur. Okay, so we will see the entire equation here. What is the entire equation means? CO2 plus the formula of RuBP is C5H12O11P2, which gives rise to 2 C3H5O6P. Why? Because each one is having each like phosphate group, and we can see the 3 carbon compounds are formed from the RuBP and CO2. Okay, so this is the first reaction that occurs within the C3 cycle. Okay, we'll go on to the next step. So what is the next step that occurs in this C3 cycle is reduction. So the 3 carbon compound which is formed from the RuBP and CO2, what it will have, it is reduced. Means reduction means obviously we know that the addition of hydrogen atoms, that is the simple thing you can remember. So it is reduced to glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate with the help of some ATP and NADPH here. Obviously these ATP and NADPH are nothing but they are evolved from the light reaction of the photosynthesis. That's why before I told you that the products of light reaction will help in the dark reaction process. Okay, so here you can see the equation how it will happen means we know that this is the formula of the Z like PGA. Okay, so sorry, this is a like typing mistake. So this is the PGA and it combines with the ATP and NADPH and it is reduced to another 3 carbon compound, that is nothing but glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. Okay, here you can see that here it is having 5 hydrogens, whereas here you can see that 7 hydrogen atoms are there. So with the addition of these hydrogen atoms will come from the NADPH molecules, means NADPH like it gives, okay, it donates its hydrogen to this 3 carbon compound 3 PGA. Okay, 3 phosphoglycerate, and then it forms a glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate. Why? Because here you can see the addition of CHO, like that's it is having that one aldehyde group, that's why it is known as glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate. Okay, so this is the overall reaction you can see here so that you can understand easily. Like here you can see that this is the 3 phosphoglycerate. At the third carbon you are seeing the phosphate group, and in the first reaction, in this reaction also, I have to tell you that another intermediate is also formed in this reaction, okay, like in the reduction phase. So what is that intermediate compound is 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate, okay, means what will happen is in the first step, the 3-phosphoglycerate with the help of ATP, it forms 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate, means here the ATP is reduced to ADP so that the free phosphate ion attached to this so that it gets two phosphates. That's why it is known as 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate. So this is the intermediate compound that is formed in the reduction phase. Okay. So when this intermediate compound, that is 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate, combines, means when the NADPH, the free NADPH molecules that will enter the stroma of the chloroplast combine with this 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate, they'll donate some hydrogen atoms and they'll give the phosphate ions to this. That's why, and then they form the glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate molecules here. Okay, so by this reaction you can see that here in the reduction phase of the Calvin cycle there is a utilization of lots of energy in the form of ATP and NADPH. Like that this whole process will take in place. Okay, so this is the second phase within the C3 cycle. Okay, so we'll go on to the next phase, that is nothing but normally known as carbohydrate formation. Means here this is also will not come under this cyclic phase, but it also happens in the C3 cycle. When means, like I want to say another point, like in the light reaction, when we discuss that light reaction occurs in two ways, like what is that cyclic way, like cyclic photophosphorylation or non-cyclic photophosphorylation, right? Normally the light reaction occurs in the process of non-cyclic photophosphorylation, but when it comes to the cyclic, what will happen, why the cyclic photophosphorylation will occur means when the thylakoid membrane needs more amount of ATP, then obviously the cyclic photophosphorylation will occur. Excuse me. So sorry. So when the thylakoid membrane needs the ATP, obviously the ATP, ATP is formed through the cyclic photophosphorylation of photosystem 1. Like that only, here you have to remember that when the chloroplast needs energy in the form of glucose, okay, so when it needs the glucose molecules, obviously the G3P molecules which were formed by this 3-PGA, obviously these G3P molecules sometimes they'll not continue the Calvin cycle, they'll exit from the Calvin cycle to form the glucose molecules by combining with the other compounds. Okay, this point also you have to remember. That's why I told you that light reaction thing, cyclic photophosphorylation. Okay, like that in there when they need the ATP, the cyclic photophosphorylation occur in the C3 cycle itself also. When it needs glucose, obviously when the cells like chloroplast needs glucose, the G3P molecules which were formed in this C3 cycle, one of the C3P molecule exits the cycle and helps in the formation of the glucose molecules. Okay, so this is also another point you have to remember. And again the next phase and the last phase of the Calvin cycle is regeneration of the RuBP. Okay, so regeneration means again, why? Because we are saying it's cycle, no? So obviously it will regenerate again and again, the formation of the products will take place. So in this step you can see that what will happen is those 5 Z3P molecules which were remaining, why? Because one of the Z3P molecule left the cycle. So remaining 5 Z3P molecules are rearranged into 3 RuBP. Okay, like that it will happen. Obviously you can see that 5Z3P means each one is having 3 carbons. So 5 means 5 into 3 means 15 carbon atoms are there in this. So those 15 carbon atoms are rearranged into 3 RuBP. You can see that here we are having the 15 carbon atoms and each RuBP is having the 5 carbons. So here 3 molecule means obviously here is also having 15 carbon atoms. Okay, like this it will happen in the overall process. Okay, but these molecules are like the RuBP is again regenerated with the help of this 5Z3P. Here you can see the reaction, overall reaction means 5 into this is the Z3P, glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate here, which combines. Here also you can see the need of ATP molecules, so which combines with the 3 ATP to form 3 ribulose bisphosphate molecules. Okay, like this process will occur. Obviously, in this reaction also one intermediate is formed, like we'll see here. Okay, in the total cycle, we'll see what is the intermediate that is formed. First of all, so for your to understand easily, I am giving you the cycle here. So just you can see the total cycle, how it will happen and everything. First thing, when the ribulose bisphosphate obviously reacts with the carbon atom that is evolved from the atmosphere with the help of the RuBisCO enzyme. Another thing that I told you, RuBisCO enzyme, in the presence of RuBisCO enzyme, it forms the 3-PGA molecules. It is known as the carbon fixation. Okay, and that 3P and from 3-PGA you can see that the ATP is converted into ADP molecules and it gives the phosphate ions to form 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate, and then 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate is again formed into with the help of the NADPH molecules. What it will do? It will form the glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. So this whole process is known as what? Reduction phase. Okay. So this glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate obviously what it will do in the last phase, that is nothing but the regeneration phase. Like every phase is having the intermediates here. This regeneration is also having one intermediate, that is nothing but ribulose 5-bisphosphate. Why? Because why I am saying it, because here you can see that the glyceraldehyde phosphate is having only one phosphate molecule, right? So that's why first of all the product which is formed from this glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate will also have one phosphate molecule. So but the end product is having the 2-phosphate ions. So that's why in the next step what will happen, the free ATP molecules which are present in the stroma of the chloroplast, they'll release some of the phosphate ions to form the ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate. So this is all the total process that will occur again and again and again in the C3 pathway of the chloroplast. Okay, here another, so this is the whole cycle you have to remember, and I have given you what are the steps here. This is known as the carbon fixation, and this whole is known as reduction, whereas this is known as regeneration. Okay, so this is the regeneration of the ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate with the intermediate compound. Okay, like this it will happen. And another thing you have to remember is, I forgot to tell you in the previous reaction, so another enzymes that also helpful us when the 3-PG is converted into 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate, aldolases are the enzymes that are helpful for this conversion. Okay, and another enzyme, that is nothing as transferase. This is also one of the enzyme which will help in the conversion of ribulose 5-bisphosphate into ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate. Okay, so here total there are 3 enzymes that are majorly present in the C3 pathway of the Calvin cycle. Okay, so this is the overall cycle of the C3 pathway. I hope all of you understood. Okay, next thing we'll go on with, what is that is nothing but summary. Okay, summary of the flow of reaction. So since now what happened, light reaction and C3 cycle were completed. So in the light reaction you can see that, so that you can remember, the H2O molecules in the presence of sunlight, they go on with the light reaction and form ATP and NADPH and some O2 molecules. Whereas in the dark reaction, and is nothing but C3 cycle, what it will happen, it occurs in the stroma and it occurs in the thylakoid membrane. Okay, so what it will happen is the atmospheric CO2 and along with this NADPH and ATP, what they'll do, they'll form glucose molecules and ADP and NADP plus. So means glucose is the main product formed here, but the cycle will go on like this and like this and like this. Okay, so the total cycle will go on, and here you can see the formation of glucose molecules in from the Z3P compound. Okay, so glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate here means in the 6 glyceraldehyde 3-phosphates, one of the glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate enters, like means leaves the cycle and forms the glucose molecules with the help of some of the compounds. So, and then at the end you can see that the utilization of energy here. Okay, here in this reaction you can see the formation of energy, and here you can see the utilization, and the end products are ADP and NADP plus. Okay, this is the overall summary of the light reaction and dark reaction. Okay, so let's go on with the PYQs obviously. So what were the PYQs that were given in the previous cycle was, and what was the previous previous, sorry, not previous cycle, previous papers were. First one, in Kelvin cycle, the regeneration of RuBP requires. Okay, so what were the options given here? NADH only, ATP only, both ATP and NADPH only carbon dioxide. You can see here in the Kelvin cycle, the regeneration of RuBP means when the Z3P to RuBP is formed, normally which type of energy it needed. We have already discussed in the cycle itself. So I think you can guess the answer. That's why I'm not telling the answer here. Okay. So next question is nothing but which of the following is not associated with the Kelvin cycle. So here you can see, like, when you know the products which are formed in the Kelvin cycle, obviously you can answer that. First one is RuBisCO, second one is PEP, third one is PGA, and fourth one is RuBP. Okay, for this I will tell you the answer. Okay, RuBisCO is obviously the enzyme involved in the Calvin cycle, and PGM is glyceraldehyde phosphate. Okay, it is also like phosphoglyceric acid. Okay, sorry, phosphoglyceric acid is also present in the reduction phase, so it is also there. And RuBP means ribulose bisphosphate it is the main product. Okay, main chemical compound that is helpful in the C3 cycle. So obviously, what is the correct answer here? That is nothing but PEP. Okay, so PEP is the correct answer here. If you see, this is the correct one. So PEP is the correct answer here. That is not involved in the C3 cycle of the photosynthesis. So obviously PEP means phosphoenol pyruvate. We know that normally it is not involved here. It is involved in the another reactions of the photosynthesis. So this is the right answer. And I hope you will guess this answer. And if not, if you comment me in the section, I'll tell you in the comment box. Okay, I'll answer you in the next video. Okay, so thank you guys. I hope all of you understood this whole thing like a C3 cycle. Like previously I said, if you have any doubts, you can comment me in the comment section obviously, and we'll move on with the next process of the photosynthesis like C4 pathway and factors affecting the photosynthesis, everything in the next videos, and some PYQs from those topics. Okay, thank you guys. Thank you so much.